Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Rogers family and all those who helped organize today's celebration, thank you for being here to honor the life and legacy of Brad Rogers. Mr. R, as so many of us call him, devoted his career to shaping young musicians in Kentucky as well as Tennessee. But as everyone in this room knows, he did far more than teach band. He built community. He built confidence. He encouraged young people to become learners, leaders, and lifelong lovers of music. For many of his students, the band room was more than a classroom. It was a second home. And Mr. Rogers, whether offering a steady baton, a raised eyebrow, or that unmistakable look that made you freeze like a deer in headlights, set a standard of excellence wrapped in encouragement and heart. As we celebrate his life today, we will hear stories from people whose lives were greatly impacted by him, as well as a performance by ensembles affiliated with the University of Louisville, which will reflect the lasting reach of his influence. The music you will hear today is a living testament to a teacher whose passion continues to echo in rehearsal halls, classrooms, and concert stages far beyond the state of Kentucky. A celebration of life invites us not only to grieve, but to remember with gratitude. So today, we gather not in silence, but in sound. Not only in sorrow, but in thanksgiving for a life that made a difference. As we begin, may we listen with full hearts, remembering that every breath, every note, and every phrase carries forward a legacy that will continue far beyond this afternoon. Thank you for being here, and let the music begin. Brad Rogers made a career of selecting great music for band students. He had a knack for combining fresh modern works with lost gems, powerful transcriptions, and classic warhorses. He loved finding old music that would teach his students how to be better musicians and better people. Our opening selection represents Renaissance dances from the early 1600s. We think Brad would have loved this collection. It is celebratory in nature, teaches students to be chamber musicians, and showcases the beauty of woodwind, brass, and percussion choirs. Arranged by Nick Pilato, we hope you enjoy this Renaissance set compiled by Michael Praetorius in 1612, Tenzu aus Terpsichore. We will now have some comments by Dr. John Stroube, Executive Director of the Kentucky Music Educators Association. Would you please welcome him to the stage at this time?
Good afternoon. I have a fair amount to say. This is the short version. There is so much to say about Brad, and several people will speak today. And some of the things that I'll say today, a few of you may have heard at an occasion a couple of years ago. So as the Executive Director of the Kentucky Music Educators Association since 2006, I'm in position to have known Brad as he interacted with and served that organization. As we celebrate his life, I'll talk about that and make a few personal observations. I remind you or inform you, depending on your status with this, but Brad's a 1978 graduate of Middle Tennessee State University of Louisville. He also completed additional graduate coursework through Illinois State University and Vanderbilt School of Music. He retired from public school teaching in July 2021 after a 42-year career, serving the last 34 years as band director at Oldham County High School. Prior to his arrival at the school in 1987, he held positions at Oakland High School in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and Central High School in Columbia, Tennessee, and Christian County High School in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Brad's teaching responsibilities at OC included directing the marching, concert, and jazz bands and assisting with the Oldham County Middle School band program. Under his direction, the OCHS band program performed with distinction in a wide variety of venues, consistently earning distinguished and superior ratings at events across Kentucky, across the United States, and in Canada. The OCHS Symphonic Band performed as a featured ensemble at the KMEA Professional Development Conference in 2006, 2010, 2014, and 2018. And by virtue of a recording made under his direction during his final year at the school, it was selected to perform there again in 2022. Also, chamber ensembles from the OCHS band program presented performances in 2013, 2014, and 2021. After 42 years of full-time teaching, he began to work part-time for the bands at UofL, which simply means, as Brad pointed out to me, it's working just as hard for low pay. Sorry, Phillip. Brad's bands were consistently superb, sounding good, looking good, behaving well, reading well, and interpreting authentically. For a number of years, I was privileged to be the sight reading judge at the band assessment event for KMEA in District 5, which includes all the schools in Oldham County. The more advanced band from OC would usually be the last band of the day, so after listening to and rating the second to the last band of the day, I would grab up the grade 6 sight reading material and head for the auditorium, where I would generally arrive in time to listen to the OC band play some of their prepared music. We would then ask the audience to leave the room per KMEA rules, and I would stand back while Brad verbally guided the OC band through the piece they were about to read, in which they would do so with near perfection. I might pause every now and then. Take your time. At one juncture, I visited the school and sat in on a rehearsal where the students were engaged and ultra serious, although the atmosphere was relaxed and calm. Mutual respect permeated the interactions. Brad received numerous individual recognitions, notably the MTSU Band of Blue Hall of Fame, inducted in 1999, OCHS Teacher of the Year, 1991, the National Band Association Citation for Musical Excellence 3 times, and the Phi Beta Mu Outstanding Bandmaster in Kentucky, 2012. He was honored as one of 50 directors who make a difference by SBO magazine, that's School Band and Orchestra magazine. In 2015, he was a John Philip Sousa Society Legion Laureate and a Rotary Club International Palmaris Fellow. In April 2019, he was recognized as a distinguished alumnus of the Middle Tennessee State University School of Music. In 2019 also, he was named Grand Marshal of the Oldham County Day Parade. He was recently inducted into the Oldham County High School Hall of Fame, class of 2021, and in 2024, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Kentucky chapter of Phi Beta Mu, the International Bandmasters Fraternity. Professional affiliations included KMEA NAFME, the National Band Association, American School Band Directors Association, Phi Beta Mu, Phi Delta Kappa, and Phi Mu Alpha Symphonia. From 2000 to 2025, he served as a staff member with the Kentucky Ambassadors of Music, Kentucky Musicians Abroad. He remained active as a clinician, adjudicator, and a private instructor on clarinet, and he performed with the Louisville Concert Band Chamber Winds, Louisville, under the baton of Dr. Frederick Speck, the Louisville Winds, directed by Nan Moore, and the Sweet Street Big Band. Also, Brad was the conductor of the Oldham County Community Band from 1989 until his passing. Of course, he has two adult daughters, Brianna and Lauren, both of whom are OCHS and MTSU alumni, and he resided in Grange, Kentucky with his wife, Patricia. Brad's articles on bands, adjudication, band directing, and the band experience for students have been published in the Bluegrass Music News and other state music education association publications, the NBA Journal, and SBO Magazine. As a leader on the podium or in the profession, he was deliberate but service-minded. He was nearly unflappable, even when frustrated. He was always where he said he would be at the time he said he would be there. He would move luggage, repair an instrument, or conduct a concert as needed, because doing for others was clearly his mission in life. For example, I remember once when one of the all-state bands needed a gong, but no gong had been arranged for. Brad drove to Oldham County High School and picked up his school's gong. Now, Brad drove a Miata. And it was February. Well before my time with KMEA, I first met Brad in late July 1988 at Middle Tennessee State University, where Jim Stuppy and he brought the Oldham County High School Band to away camp there the same week that Beth Stribling and I brought the Murray High School Band, and I can still picture the moment that we met. One year in the late 90s then, Brad brought some students to Murray State University's Quad State Honor Band right there in town where I was, and Brad stopped by the Murray High School Band room where he spent a little time working with our clarinets. Again, that's firmly in my memory. In 2005, I came to work for KMEA, and that year, Brad became the KMEA band chair-elect. The band council, in the course of that time, wanted to improve the State Band Association, the State Band Assessment event, and I attended a subcommittee meeting in the Grange with Brad, Tom Bronner, and Bob Elliott. And Pat was along too, and that's where I met her. Gradually, I was getting to know this guy and to know about this guy. At one time, somebody declared that my job as executive director included having to be the wet blanket on everybody's great ideas. Brad was nearby, and I asked him, I said, Brad, what do you think about that? He said, it's a necessary function. How Brad is that? He served in the on the KMEA Executive Committee. He was the 5th District Representative to the Marching Band Council, the KMEA Strategic Planning Committee, and from 2008 to 2010 as the KMEA Band Division Chair. He served as President of KMEA from 2015 to 2017. Therefore, he was on the Executive Committee from 2013 to 2019. He was also appointed to the Executive Committee to fill in after the passing of George Bolden. In 2017, he was honored as KMEA's High School Teacher of the Year, and after he retired from his position at OC, Brad approached then KMEA President David Graham saying, "Put me to work." So David then appointed Brad to oversee the complex process of selecting invited performing groups for the annual conference. His level-headed approach to situations and issues helped me to evolve as an executive. And I don't think either one of us appreciated that at the time. I feel privileged to have been in a position to know Brad, to have spent time with him, and to have learned from him. I deeply regret the loss of future opportunities to do more of the same. In any circumstance that I've been a part of or known about, Brad was the adult in the room. His consistent employment of thoughtful, careful analysis to problem resolution and thoughtful, careful approach as to how to treat others. These are the qualities I most admire about Brad. There's a poem by William Arthur Ward, the title of which is Before You. And I don't know if Brad knew of this poem. He heard me read it one time, but I don't know if he knew of it other than the fact that this describes how he led his life. Before you speak, listen. Before you write, think. Before you spend, earn. Before you invest, investigate. Before you criticize, wait. Before you pray, forgive. Before you quit, try. Before you retire, save. Before you die, give. I'll close by quoting George W. Bush when he spoke at the funeral of John McCain, where he said, "I am honored to be with you to offer my sympathies and to celebrate a great life." He further said, "Some lives are so vivid, it is difficult to imagine them ended. Some voices are so vibrant and distinctive, it's hard to think of them still. A man who seldom rested is laid to rest, and his absence is tangible, like the silence after a mighty roar. Fondest of farewells to my good friend."
During Brad's time on the U of L faculty, the UofL Symphonic Band interacted with him frequently. He had an open invitation to visit rehearsal at any time, which he made a point to do every week. A typical greeting would involve Dr. Ackland giving a warm welcome, followed by Mr. Rogers cracking a joke, sharing a story, or walking up to a section to boisterously announce, "Use more air." Dr. Ackland's funniest memory is when she did a big setup to announce his birthday and could no longer find him in the room. It turns out he was on the floor fixing the vibraphone pedal. That was Mr. Rogers in true fashion. Always helping, always fixing, always making the performance experience better for students. Our next selection, Rest, is the Symphonic Band's musical thank you to Brad for his countless hours invested in the lives of so many students. It is an adaptation of Ticheli's choral work, There Will Be Rest, set to the following text by poet Sarah Teasdale. There will be rest, and sure stars shining, over the rooftops crowned with snow, a rain of rest, serene forgetting, the music of stillness, holy and low. I will make this world of my devising, out of a dream in my lonely mind. I shall find the crystal of peace above me, stars I shall find. The final selection for the University of Louisville Symphonic Band is one of the most frequently performed military marches in the world. It quickly gained popularity within the Prussian military for its reference to Comrades, which inspired soldiers to stand together as one regardless of danger. We are reminded today of the spirit of camaraderie Brad built throughout his career, reflected in the beautiful gathering of so many beloved family members, friends, and colleagues here with us. Brad purchased this march for the UofL bands at a closeout sale from Midwest Clinic. It is hard. That's so like him. Scouring the clearance section. It is hard, fun, a little cranky, and musically satisfying for every member of the band. Exactly the kind of music Brad always knew how to find. We hope you enjoy Old Comrades March by Carl Tieke.
Where the IU Orchestra from Bloomington did a concert here. Not here, but they did over the US. And the conductor, Thomas Wilkins, was a friend of mine. He was my supervisor. Oh, wow. But he's a tuba. He used to play tuba before he moved up into the ranks. And he was talking about he was going to be a conductor. Anybody there for and we watched him conduct Appalachian. Conducted the record. And he had chops. Riding around. He was doing his duties and stuff with a pitch pipe in his ear. He conducted most of the major orchestras. All over the world. It's probably
Oh, sure. If he's out in Los Angeles, he's working with like.
Well, he can Hollywood Bowl conductor. So we know he's working with his stuff.
Yeah, rest in peace.
It's still weird.
I saw him that week. I was in Los Angeles. I saw him. His heads up back to Oakland. And so Jim came out to see the concert because he was playing like $3 and so he looked perfectly fine. He showed it, held himself out there. A week later, both husbands. It's hard to know, or I don't know the specifics.
Our next speaker is Sergeant First Class Matthew Harrison, graduate from Oldham County High School, class of 2003. Please welcome him to the stage at this time.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank the Rogers family for allowing me to speak to you all. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of former students who could tell their own stories about Brad Rogers. He is the reason we're all here today, and to have that kind of impact on a community that spans decades is truly remarkable. It is wonderful to see so many former classmates, colleagues, and teachers here, amongst all of you. My name is Matthew Harrison. I'm a graduate from OCHS in 2003, and I spent 2 years here at UofL. After struggling through my early adult years, I ended up enlisting in the Army as a musician. I'm here today with my wife Meredith and our 3 sons, Ethan, Owen, and Shane. I can proudly say, with conviction, that Brad Rogers was the catalyst for pretty much everything I have in my life. Way back in '96, I did not want to try the band at first. My dad was a 2-sport athlete in high school, and he was having me do basketball, soccer, baseball, anything that he wanted. He was trying to make me him. It took a little bit of persuasion from my mom, along with Brad making his rounds through Centerfield Elementary, demonstrating instruments to our class. And all it took was him playing a 3-octave chromatic scale and ripping off a bunch of glissandos to sell me on trying the clarinet in middle school. I was extremely fortunate to have both him and Kevin Cox as my middle school teachers. And if you were staying after school to practice and improve your craft, they'd invest right back into you. And that led to me playing on this very stage as an 8th grader with the OC Community Band in '99. How old? After a few years of high school, my mind was made up. I wanted to do what Brad did as well as anyone, become a high school band director. And it never mattered how the first part of my day went, because at 2 o'clock, I'd be in the band hall, doing what I loved with a teacher who made it fun for 7 years. We never knew when he would catch us off guard with some heartfelt words of wisdom or an unexpected joke that would have all of us laughing, himself included. I still remember the day I told him I was going to pursue a career in music ed. He was very happy to hear that, very encouraging, and told me to try and get a high school teaching job instead of middle school, so I wouldn't have to spend so much money on earplugs. About 25 years later, I still find myself laughing about that one. That's who he was. Unfortunately, I spent the last year and a half of high school dealing with a major family hardship. My mother was diagnosed with colon cancer, and the only way I could deal with it was to just further immerse myself in music. I started getting into composing, arranging, and I was inspired by the DCI shows we went to and took up marching percussion. Mark Kirsting, are you here today? Are you not? I mean, he's in the area, but he was in the Blast. I don't know if anybody remembers Blast back in the early 2000s. Can we get that back? That was amazing. Seriously, that was such an amazing show. But that's what inspired me to pick up a pair of sticks and start playing a snare drum. That and any chance I had to do a university honor band and get away for a week, I was there. When we started to struggle financially, I didn't know where the money was coming from to pay for me to go to those events. But Brad told me not to worry about it. He knew how much those events meant to me, and he made it happen. And when my mother passed, I had so much support from Brad and the rest of the band. I'll never forget how many of them came to the funeral service to support me and my family in our time of need. I ended up choosing to go to UofL to stay close to home, but the financial and emotional challenges were too much to overcome, and I had to disenroll after 2 years. I made the decision to pursue a military career after 4 bleak years of no music, dead-end jobs, debt, and defaulted student loans. In the end, it was my own personal Brad Rogers network that saved me. One of my freshmen, Chelsea Shivenen, had already enlisted in the Army bands. She encouraged me to do the same. Mark Ferguson, my clarinet brother for 3 years, let me borrow his instrument because I'd sold mine after I thought I wouldn't need it anymore. Heather Combs, my good friend and rival from 5 years of district, state, and honor bands, helped me choose my audition excerpts and get the rust off. When I called Brad and I told him that I had passed my audition and enlisted, he was elated. And I will never forget the 12 years I spent in 4 different bands and the opportunities that Brad gave me to stop by and talk to his students about how great an experience it was. For some of us, we met our future significant others in our second home, the OC band room that always had a green Mazda convertible parked right outside. That's where Meredith and I met 25 years ago. I'm not sure how much help she really needed with marching, as it might have all been a ploy to get me to notice her. And after the Army and Meredith helped me get my head on straight, we went from dating to married rather quickly. Brad didn't tell us at the time, but we got married on his 55th birthday. And of course, he was there for us. I'm sure in his mind it was a great birthday present for 2 of his past students. He also got to hear my infamous clarinet rendition of Careless Whisper that fortunately happened around the infancy of smartphones, so there's no video evidence. The last time Meredith and I saw Brad, he was the Grand Marshal of the Oldham County Day Parade. And due to everything going on that day, we couldn't make time to talk, but Meredith did get one wonderful picture. It was me holding our first son, Ethan, 2 years old at the time, and Brad waving at us from the lead vehicle. And it was truly an honor to see our greatest mentor recognized by the community that he served for decades. And last summer, I was planning to come down here to see Brad and Pat so they could finally meet our boys. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And as much as I've been through it, it's impossible. And everyone knows this, it's impossible to prepare for this type of loss, whether it's expected or sudden. Going through it a few times, it doesn't prepare you for when it happens again. And the one saving grace is that it brought so many of us back together, drifted apart over the years for school, work, or family obligations. And again, it's just so great to see some of you all here today. We all knew the impact that Brad had on generations of musicians, but being able to see it all come together here in one place today is truly spectacular. And on behalf of everyone in attendance here today, thank you to the musicians and the faculty who will honor Brad with their performances, to the students with aspirations of becoming our next generation of music educators. I truly hope that this day inspires you to continue the journey. Brad Rogers, thank you for helping us develop the musical skills that allowed so many of us to chase our dreams and establish our careers. Thank you for the laughs, mentorship, encouragement, and life lessons, and that it's okay to break the tension in the room with a perfectly timed joke. Thank you for the eclectic selection of pep band tunes that leave us reminiscing decades later about the good old days of jamming out in the high school bleachers whenever we hear those songs again. Thank you for creating an environment that allowed us to forge lifelong friendships, colleagues, marriages, and children. Thank you for being you and for giving all of us the honor and privilege to say, we are Rogers raised. Thank you all.
The Untitled March was the final march composed by Phillip Sousa. In December 2023, Brad was a member of the clarinet section of the Louisville Concert Band during their performance of this march at the Midwest International Band and Orchestra Conference. Today, we will give it the honorary title of Bradford's Brigade. Angel's Gate is a 6,761-foot summit located in the Grand Canyon. The title of Phillip Sparke's beautiful Sunrise at Angel's Gate serves as a reminder of how the Rogers family enjoyed summer road trip adventures in the great American West. As a teacher and conductor, Brad's repertoire selections were broad and often adventurous, as he loved to stretch his musicians. He also had a flair for bringing transcriptions from the past to life. These transcriptions are often nicknamed war horses. The finale from Symphony No. 1 by Vasily Kalinnikov is such a piece. In 2013, Brad performed on this piece with the Louisville Concert Band in their first appearance at the Midwest International Band and Orchestra Clinic.
Say that again? So you got to come play in the brass band. I'm so busy with my own band. Put you on the list of uninformed. There you go. Just in case. There's like is that Raymond? Is that Raymond? Raymond and I were in All-State together back in 1999. I remember. Is he superintendent of the school system now? He should be. No, he's working for years. Oh, is he? Yeah. He's higher up with over in the business. Yeah. The executive director. Smart guy. Yeah, he's smart guy. But yeah, you know, he got out. He had a PT6. And so he sold it. And so just maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and North Africa had a big black tuba that was and he was playing on it and everything. And so we just started playing this ensemble in this group. And he was playing on the people. So Ticheli showed up in Atlanta, and I talked to him about it. And he hopped in the car.
When you know, you know.
He drove down there. It was funny. All it was like on a Thursday. And the same pictures said, "We should go to and so we went to talk to Jill about it. I talked to Julie since she's been with me. So next thing I knew, he was driving to Atlanta on Saturday. He goes down there. It's the campus playing in one of the military bases.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we got he drove back, picked that one up, and came back and played.
Same day.
Same day. Oh, so you just turn around. Woo, and then run and got it.
Well, thank you.
That's a nice one. That's a good one. This is down there playing with the flag. This is the Louisville Concert Band. So there's two of them. This is Champs-Élysées. Yeah. And then the Louisville one, there's a lot of cross-breeding in this one.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We're big time. We're not that big.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is Katie Fuller, a former band parent of the Oldham County High School Band. Would you welcome her to the stage at this time?
I would like to first just thank Pat for inviting me to speak today. It really means a lot to me. I am here today with my husband Ian, and my son Kieran, and my older son Keaton could not be here today, but he really wanted to. I am humbled to be here because I am just one of thousands, and I do mean thousands of parents who can stand on this stage and speak about the good that Brad Rogers brought to our children's lives. That was the kind of teacher he was, not just influential to a few, but transformational to many. My two sons, Keaton and Kieran, were both shaped by his leadership in education. When we moved to Oldham County, Keaton was an incoming freshman, always a hard time to change schools, right? And he was terrified to attend his first day of band camp. He didn't know anyone. He didn't want to stand alone and look stupid, as they say. And I told him he had to try. And that if he hated it, he could call me and I would come pick him up by lunch, because you know that's what moms do. And you know what? He never called. Because from the moment he walked through those doors, he found his people, his joy, his confidence. He found Mr. Rogers, who created an environment that kids wanted to be, where they wanted to be, where they would work hard, they would play hard, they would laugh hard, and they wanted to stay. So many students have their own Mr. Rogers stories, and our Kieran is no different. The year Kieran decided to play bari sax, he did it in typical middle school fashion. It was the end of his 7th grade year, and he told Mr. Brandon Aitchen, he said, hey, I want to play bari sax next year, and he'd never picked up a saxophone in his life. And of course, they gave him 3 months in which to learn to play the bari sax so that he could play with the 8th grade band. And we needed help. So we reached out to Mr. Rogers, and Brad didn't hesitate. He gave Kieran lessons, he encouraged him, he believed in him. And Brad helped him record his audition videos for Middle School All District, which he made that year. But most importantly, he told Kieran he had a great tone. Nothing motivates a kid like a teacher who sees something good in them and says it aloud. As a former teacher myself, I know how powerful that is. Confidence is not accidental. It is built carefully by someone who believes in you before you believe in yourself. And that holds true whether you're a kid or an adult. My friend Rena Fry, she's an Oldham County Community Band member. She told me recently that when she would struggle with a part of a piece, Brad always had a strategy to help her get there. And he never made her regret asking. There was no ego, just guidance. That kind of leadership doesn't just produce good concerts. It produces musicians for life. It produces composers like Evan Kibalowski, who honored Brad with a sweeping score called The Jolly Roger. It produces adults who still pick up their instruments years and years and years later. It produces people who carry music in their bones for life. And as tired as it is, I'm going to make the joke, people, but a life without music would be flat. Okay, I'm a former teacher. You got to have visual aids, right? But you know, when we think about years that were kind of a B flat, the COVID years were definitely a B flat. Those were the years I learned the most from Brad. The band booster leadership, Chad and Lisa Adams, and the many other band parents who were involved, we witnessed Brad going through what might have been the most professionally challenging experience of his life. For a man whose teaching thrived on togetherness, COVID was a gut punch. But Brad refused to let our band die. When concerts were canceled, he found a way. He still had our Halloween concert. The kids were standing 6 feet apart on a football field. All the parents were in the stands. The horns were covered, the masks were on, but we still had the concert. And Mr. Rogers, he dressed up as a Ghostbuster. He had the proton pack and everything. And the 3 drum majors, they were each dressed as ghosts, right? And so he pulls out his little proton gun and he targets them and zzz, and the next thing you know, he crosses the streams and each ghost lost its sheet to reveal historical marching band uniforms from OCHS from years and years and years ago. Now that was cool. That was really cool. Brad made it fun for the parents and the kids. During that time, he fought for rehearsal time. He got creative to ensure that we still had concerts, whether they were video or smaller versions, whatever we could do to see our kids play. And when tradition was stripped away, he and Pat pulled off the band banquet in a parking lot, so seniors would still be honored, so the students could still celebrate their year of playing together. From socially distanced lawn chairs, we watched the end-of-year video like it was a drive-in movie. Brad and Pat did it. They had found a way to make that year memorable in a good way. It wasn't what he had planned. It wasn't what he wanted, for sure. But he still made it band. Just prior to his retirement from OCHS, Brad wrote a letter to band parents saying he felt he had failed his students during that time. I read that line over and over, and I can tell you this, that was not failure. That was heroic leadership under impossible circumstances. He carried the program through when others were content to let music programs quietly shrink. That's who Brad was. He was a fighter for our students, for the music. One of my favorite images of Brad is this. let me paint the picture. The band is on stage and has just finished performing a piece. Brad's back is to the audience, and the audience is applauding. And then Brad's hand would reach out, and he'd give a thumbs up to a student, maybe a little finger point, and he would sit there and then sometimes give it to multiple students, and even though you could not see his face, you knew there was that half grin, you know, the little half grin, and that squinty eye, and he was sitting there saying, "Good job, see, you did it," because you knew that's what he was saying. He didn't need the spotlight. He wanted the students to have it. So if there is something that we can carry forward from Brad Rogers, it's this. In anything you do your part. Play your best. Encourage the person in front of you and have fun doing it. Because belief and joy carries farther than ego ever will. And when we choose to give someone that thumbs up, when we help them see that they did it, we are continuing his legacy as a teacher, as a musician, and as a human. Thank you, Brad. We miss you, but we are so lucky to have known you.
Kentucky Musicians Abroad, originally known as the Kentucky Ambassadors of Music, has been important to the Rogers family since the year 2000. His daughters traveled as musicians, and Pat and Brad served as longtime staff members. In fact, Brad served on every tour since the year 2000 and was the associate conductor of the Red Band. On July 2nd, 2026, Brad concluded his portion of the concert in Victoria Embankment Garden in London, England, by conducting a beautiful performance of the Military Escort March. Another long-standing part of the repertoire of the Kentucky musicians abroad has been the beautiful trumpet ensemble setting of the Irish Blessing. This afternoon, it will be performed by the joint trumpet ensemble comprised of players from the University Wind Symphony, the Louisville Concert Band, and the Kentucky Musicians Abroad staff. Brad was also a player in the Kentucky Musicians Abroad staff combo, typically the octet of 3 clarinets, 2 trumpets, trombone, euphonium, and percussion provided transition music between the white band and blue band sets. Toot, Toot, Tootsie, and Champs-Élysées were both performed on the July 2nd, 2026 London concert. No surprise, both were fan favorites.
Brad, we wanted to celebrate, and we have been. Not long after I began teaching at the U of L, Dr. Lauren Watt, our head of the music education department, came to me and said, "Fred, I have someone you need to meet." That someone was Brad Rogers. From that point on, and this was 30 years and change, Brad and I began to connect on one project and another. And I valued his impact, of course, as a musician and teacher, but even more importantly, as friend. Brad was a founding member with this group of people, this band on stage, that over the years, he played close to 100 concerts over the whole sequence of years with this group, and only missed one. That's Brad, contributing in every way. I felt honored when asked to write a piece remembering and celebrating Brad's impact as a musician, teacher, colleague. And last fall, I came across some ancient Scottish verse. It's an ancient poem that then was set to music called The Parting Glass. And it would be sung at the end of a gathering where people were having a good old time, and it was time to end the party. And then it became a song that they would sing, The Parting Glass. Scottish, and then the Irish took it in all over the place. It was more popular for a time than Auld Lang Syne. This commission came by virtue of one of the members in this group now, Dan Clifford, the current Director of Bands at Oldham County High School. Commission for the band, but also the District 5 band directors and their students. But I came across that set of poetry, and I came across the tune, and I thought, oh, Brad would like this. And so ended up having the piece finished up in advance, enough in advance that you're going to get an opportunity to hear it today. The proceeds from the commission will all go to the Bradford Dean Rogers Music Education Endowment. And that was started, of course, by the Rogers family to carry on, to continue to support, to continue to give young people who are going to follow in these footsteps opportunity. Those of you who might also just be hearing about this and wish to support, there's a QR code on the back of your program. If you want to be in on helping to continue to do what Brad was so dedicated to in every way, and that's the next and the next and the next generation of musicians. Many, many thanks to all of you on the stage, to all of you in the audience, to all of you being here to celebrate our great friend, Brad Rogers. There's a line from that particular tune, The Parting Glass, on which this is based. So they say at the end, "So fill me to the parting glass. Good night, and joy be to you all."
As Mrs. Rogers was preparing for this celebration, she made a plea for anyone who had a fond memory of Mr. R to forward it to her. And while I cannot read them all, I would like to take a moment to share some of them, as well as my own thoughts, and extend a heartfelt thank you on behalf of the Rogers family for sharing your memories, thoughts, and prayers. The first memory that was shared with her says, on one of my visits back to Kentucky, I saw a familiar Miata parked in the high school lot late in the afternoon. I think we all know that car. I think it was a Tuesday before community band. Anyway, I pulled in and parked and walked the familiar stairs up to the band room door. Brad was puttering around as he did. I hadn't seen him in over 10 years. As soon as he saw me, he recognized me, and that signature grin was on his face. I told him how bad I had felt for years about leaving Kentucky. I told him that I felt guilty that he and Mr. Cox poured so much into me, and I felt like I had squandered it. He patted me on the back and said something along the lines of, I never felt like that. I knew you had things that you had to do. It made me feel a lot better. I miss him a lot. Thank you both for all that you did for so many band kiddos. The second memory states, I've thought a while about what to write for his celebration of life. There will never be enough words to describe his impact or yours. Love you both so much. I'm writing this with a heavy but grateful heart to share the unforgettable impact Mr. Rogers had on all of us. To many, he was a teacher, but to his students, he was the heart of a family. He had a rare way of being hard on us, not out of authority, but because he saw potential in us that we weren't yet brave enough to see in ourselves. He pushed for excellence because he knew we were capable of it. And in doing so, he taught us discipline, grit, and the value of showing up for one another. The sheer volume of personal memories he is part of is staggering. Our time in the band room wasn't just about the music, it was about the bond we shared. I still laugh thinking about the time I mooned him during color guard practice. Yikes. A moment of pure teenage chaos that he handled with his signature mix of shock and humor. Also, the day he found one of my undergarments left behind, and without missing a beat, hung it on the chalkboard for the whole class to see. This was supposed to be a lesson in responsibility. I remember seeing it and knowing that it was mine. I prayed that no one was around when I went to grab it. I looked for any sign of life before running to the board, only to grab it, turn around, and see him standing outside of his office. The sheer embarrassment I felt. But because he was an amazing human being, he just smiled, told me to have a good day. He embraced our madness and turned a simple classroom into a safe haven. He is deeply missed by so many of us who carry his lessons in our daily lives. Mr. Rogers will forever hold a place in our hearts, and his legacy lives on in every note we play and every life we lead with the strength that he gave us. I only hope to have even a fraction of the impact on my own students as he did on me. The following thoughts and memories are my own. And those of you in the audience who really know me, you'll get a kick out of this. Since November of last year, I've been teaching elementary music full-time in Trimble County, Kentucky. I don't believe in coincidence, yet the irony cannot escape me that once upon a time, I was in this building telling the faculty here at UofL that I would never teach elementary music. Here we are. And the fact that this opportunity came shortly after the passing of one of the best men, musicians, and mentors that I had the blessing to know is not an accident. I think God was seeking to remind me of the impact that Mr. Rogers had on my life through music, and that there are more young people who need to not just see notes on a page, but to experience what those notes can bring. There's no better instrument, pun intended, than music to discover life, hope, and love. And while Mr. R would not hesitate to critique my playing or help me prepare for an audition, the lessons he taught me and us about life are what I still carry today. I actually haven't told very many people about this. I have about 10 pictures I've taken of my classrooms, each one intended to be featured as a social media post updating people about my life and the privilege I have to be teaching music again. Yet every time I go to make this announcement, I find myself wishing the one person I would want to tell the most was still here. I know it would bless Mr. Rogers immensely to see all of you together in a room like this. Not to celebrate him, but even just to be together, surrounded by the tempos, dynamics, and styles that he devoted his life to helping us understand. Mrs. R and I spoke on the phone this past Thursday afternoon, and even she mentioned that he would consider us all crazy to do something like this for him. He would probably tell us something like, "Oh, I'm not really important. I just wave a stick around." But you see, that's the thing about being pure in heart. If you have to tell everyone else that you're pure-hearted, it's not genuine. That would be a selfish and attention-seeking act. However, when all of us are here together, knowing that he never did anything out of selfish desires, but rather solely the desire to see others flourish, we can all unite in saying that he had the purest of hearts. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." And in the way we gather, remember, and carry his example forward, his heart continues to press on. Brad Rogers came to the University of Louisville band faculty shortly after his retirement from Oldham County High School. While his official title was Assistant Director of Athletic Bands and Director of the University Community Band, it's no surprise that his involvement was much deeper, touching all elements of our band program. We close this celebration with a performance of Cardinal Circle. This selection is the first selection played by the Cardinal Marching Band at the beginning of every game day continuity session.